Hela, a world in which endless battles were fought. A piece of hell, and here he was called against his will. In this world, either a person kills or they kill him. A lot of armed people, whose bodies were wounded and bloodied, shouted that there was no need to lose heart. They needed to go into battle. Suddenly there was a loud explosion, and everyone turned around. It turned out that a huge sinister monster with red bright eyes and sharp fangs approached them. Some guy took an already bloodied sword, set it in front of him and looked the monster in the eyes, then shouted for it to come here. "Parasite!" He jumped high, pointed his sword at the head of the monster and destroyed it. But at the same time, his right hand suffered, which was chopped off. There were many corpses around, and he lay among them exhausted after a fierce battle. Kang Hyuk, this paradise of death will be his resting place. After a moment, he woke up, opened his eyes, and with fright he began to examine his body. He looked down at his hands in surprise and began to reason that he didn't know what happened next, but he had a desire to control all the beings he once defeated. The stronger his enemies were, the more powerful his army became. Humans became his enemies in Hal, and they had very different abilities. Finally, after 10 years of fighting strong opponents, he found a gate through which he could enter another dimension. His brother wanted to go back to Earth and suggested that he come with him, to which Hyuk replied, closing his eyes, that he had done everything he could for him. Let him do everything on his own. The brother only smiled. He understood him without words. He always was like that, both after their call to Hela and before, during their life on Earth. 6 years have passed since the brother returned to Earth, and he became the highest necromancer, the Lord of Death, which absolutely everyone fears, the leader of the undead, who hates all living things. He was the only person feared and respected by other necromancers. He continued to live in Hela and did not want to return to the human world. In this world, he can give free rein to his desire to kill, which he could not do on Earth. It was the only place for an awakened necromancer like him. Demon Castle, Hal. There was a skeleton sitting on a high throne in some room, to which another skeleton approached, and it was Desmond Roderick, the spirit of death. "This has spoken, Lord. This has an urgent message for him." Hyuk answered him without turning around to tell him what he wanted to say. The spirit replied that his brother, who was in the human world, had died. At that moment, the skeleton on the throne began to glow with a bright light. Everything around began to shake, and then a bright light explosion occurred. The master said, "Desmond." The spirit of death spoke, "Yes, his lord." Hyuk got up strangely and said that he needed details. He walked closer and asked again, "Is the spirit telling him that his brother is dead?" Desmond Roderick is the spirit of death, is the right hand of Kang Hyuk. His ability was to see every living soul in all dimensions. The spirit of death said that walking under the shadow of death, he salutes the king of Hela, the lord of the castle of demons. Long ago, he ordered the spirit of death to watch over the soul of his brother in the human world, and the spirit carried out this order. And more recently, he was offended that the soul of his brother was torn from the body. Hek replied that the spirit must prove it to him. Desmond said that, "Of course, sir." After these words, Desmond made several movements with his staff, and before the eyes of Hek appeared the appearance of his brother. Those who look death in the eye remember everything. Hyuk looked at him and thought that he looked exactly the same as when they last met, but it had been 6 whole years of the entire return to Earth. He directed his hand to his body. It was the gaze of a dead man. When his brother was dying, 2 guys looked at him before dying, who were glad that he was finally dead, saying the words that even the strongest returnee in the world cannot cope with them alone. When a person does not calculate his strength, he can get into such a situation that he dies painfully alone, and no one will know about it. Now that they have killed Kang Ming, their era will begin. Some time passed after the return of his brother, and they compared his soul with the souls of other earthlings, as a result of which they found out that his brother was the strongest among them. However, there were plenty of people who were only slightly inferior to him in strength. After some thought, Hyuk said with a sad look that they were moving to the ground. "Did Desmond ask him again, Lord?" But Hek did not listen to anything and added to his words that Desmond should tell the 5 princes that he would soon call them. Desmond was at a loss and said, 5 princes, 5 of the strongest necromancers who agreed to serve him after he removed the seal from them. The monsters that existed since the dark ages of Hal and wrote history with blood Only after defeating them, he was able to capture the castle of the demons of Gargoa. Heck turned away and said, "Desmond, he remains in charge of the castle. He is sure that in his absence there will be plenty who want to capture this castle." Desmond spoke with fear, "But Lord, it is very dangerous to go to the ground alone." Hyuk turned to him and said that he would call for help if something happened. He couldn't take them with him. Does Desmond understand what he is talking about and what he means? Desmond tilted his head and said, "Of course, sir. Desmond Roderick will always follow his orders." Heck thought about it. The metahumans of the earth, people who had evolved into strong and bloodthirsty beings. How could any of them defeat Kang Ming? After all, by Hal's standards, they are nothing more than easy prey. And yet they killed his brother, who, here in Hal, won victories with him. He was intrigued by this. He can't wait to get a taste of these metahumans. After these reflections, Heck said that in this world he did not care to kill anyone else. He remembered how he turned to his brother and said, "Kang Ming, they fought to the death for this castle. Does he really want to leave this world and return home?" To which Ming could not quickly answer and only spoke, "Brother." Heck added to his words, "Does he not understand that by staying with him, they will be able to share power over this whole world?" Ming replied that after all that had happened, he still didn't feel anything even at this moment. Hyuk thought, just like that, he was born devoid of the ability to any feelings, sadness, or love. Sometimes he wondered if his ruthlessness was not a help in the world of Hal, and the reason that he had achieved heights of power and strength here. Whatever it was, they hugged, and Ming continued that he really hoped that one day he would feel comfortable on the ground. Heck thought cozy. Can it be comfortable there? Not at school, not at work. He never felt at ease anywhere. The more people around him, the more his hands itched to kill. But Kang Ming could not understand this. He was normal. The brother wanted to enter the portal, saying that they would not see each other until he himself decided to return to Earth. "Please let him think about it, brother." Kang Hyuk continued to look after him with a sad expression. At this moment, Desmond created a portal. Hyuk took a step closer to this portal, looked into the distance and thought that yes, he, Kang Hyuk, the highest necromancer of Hal, the Lord of Death, the commander of the undead, filled with bloodlust for all living things, and he returns down to Earth for that very purpose. Desmond stopped and said, "Lord, the gates to Earth are open." Seoul, South Korea, a bright portal appeared in the city, from which Hyuk stepped out. He looked around and thought about how it seems that there is no one around. He was mentally spoken to by Desmond, who noted that they returned safely to Earth, sir. Heck asked again, "Has Desmond already notified the 5 princes?" Desmond replied, "Yes, sir." They replied that they would be ready to come at his call at any moment. Hyuk replied that it was great, after which he asked, "How much power can he expend on the ground?" Desmond replied that he could use all the power he had, master. The atmosphere was full of mana. He replied that it was excellent, and Desmond added that he would always be in touch with him, his master. Desmond would be his eyes and ears. Heck thought that he should remember one important thing. This is not the planet Earth that he knows. Now it is full of people who awakened their abilities due to the disaster that happened 16 years ago. Now these metahumans have taken over in many cities around the world, including Seoul. Also, not long before he moved to Hal, a lot of monsters and dungeons appeared. He looked into the distance and said that the association was probably already aware of Kang Ming's death. He would pay them a visit. 16 years ago, portals suddenly began to open all over the Earth, leading to dungeons from other dimensions. Terrifying monsters began to come out of this, and people who had previously been called to these dimensions also began to appear. These people were called returnees. As a rule, these people possessed incredible strength. Sochodong, Gangnam area. Dong. He wondered, the Hunters Association. He's pretty sure that there is something in this organization that they know about the circumstances of Kang Ming's death, because he was known to be the strongest among the people. He went inside the building and 2 employees got up from their seats and said to him, "Welcome to the Association of Hunters." They also asked how they could help him. He looked the employee in the eyes and said that he needed any employee Kang Ming. He was asked again, does he mean their undeceased Kang Ming, an S-class hunter? She asks for forgiveness and asks, well, what does he have to do with him? Hyuk replies that he is his older brother. The employee asks again, older brother? But Mr. Kang Ming has no relatives. The other employee turns to her and adds, so didn't he say he had an older brother? After that, the employee came to her senses and said, "So is he the same older brother who refused to return to Earth? He needs to wait a minute." Hyuk remained silent and wondered what it meant that Kang Ming did not hide the fact that he had relatives, but at least he kept silent about the nature of his strength. A breathless man ran up behind him and apologized for the misunderstanding. He got a call about him. It was a big surprise for him, and there were too many people in the elevator, so he had to use the stairs. His name is Hwang Sang-wook. He is the director of the emergency department of the Korean Hunters Association. So he is Kang Ming's older brother. Hyuk did not stand on ceremony and immediately asked him where his body was. Sanok smiled and wondered why he was talking so informally, and what he thinks that if Kang Ming is his brother, then he is also an important person. Sanok replied that first of all, the association should do some checks to establish his relationship with Kang Ming. He thought that he himself was an A-class hunter, but he would be patient after all. His brother died recently, and he told him to go a little further. Hyuk asked him, "What are these checks?" To which Sanok replied that the thing is that after the death of Kang Ming, many imposters tried to impersonate his older brothers. He was the most powerful hunter in the world and earned a considerable fortune during his life, so his sudden death caused a lot of unrest in society. He took out a card, carried it to the door, and access was allowed to enter. He added that he had no heirs, so many scoundrels decided that this was their chance to get rich quick. Unfortunately for them, by association, there is some information about Kang Ming's older brother. So all their attempts were in vain. They weeded them all out through a simple check. They entered the room and Sanok added that if he really is Kang Ming's brother, then the genetic test will put everything in its place. There was a girl in the room who said with a smile, "Good evening." Behind her, many digital monitors and other employees were talking among themselves. The girl took out a syringe, shoved a needle into his hand, and said that they would do a quick blood test for mana and genetic information. The girl looked at the screen and said that she congratulated him. He is a metahuman and a mana user, and he is also Kang Ming's blood relative. He passed the mana test, and his genetic information confirms the relationship with the deceased. Hyuk sat in the chair in silence, and Sanok happily added that since they all found out that they needed to go up to the office, and he had something to tell him. After all, he's not a simple hunter, but the only member of the late Kang Ming's family, so he cannot explain everything to him right here. He also got wet clothes, and after that he yelled at someone to call the support department immediately and tell them to bring a change of clothes to the emergency department. They went into the office, and Hyuk was given a change of clothes. He changed clothes and heard the conversations of some employees who discussed the information that the older brother of the hunter Kang Ming had come to the office. The girl was surprised that Kang Ming had a brother. The other girl asked her again, did she not know about it? He mentioned this more than once during the interview. His brother chose to stay in another dimension, and Kang Ming returned to Earth. The girl asked again, but how did he stay alive in that world? The other girl replied that she had no idea how he did it. Kang Ming was a handsome man. His brother was the same. She says exactly, except that he is a little pale, doesn't she think so? The other girl asked again, pale? He just has fair skin. Kang Ming was in very good physical shape, but his brother didn't look strong at all. The girl agreed with her and said, yes, he is more like a fragile and thin flower. At that moment, Sanok ran out into the hallway and yelled at the girls, who is gossiping in the hallway? They both have to go home. The girls responded well and apologized to him. Sanok took some sheets of paper, went to Hyuk's meeting and said, he apologizes. He owes the president of the association and requested permission to reveal all information about Kang Min to him. Personal information about the hunters is hidden under the heading secret, since in their day it is the equivalent of information about the country's defense capability. The assignments his brother received are his personal information. Abilities are all a guarded secret. And only for confirmed members of his family, all information about his contracts, assignments, and organizations in which he was a member can be disclosed. They have much more information about his late brother, but here are all the answers to the questions that interest him, and he submitted a folder of papers. Hyuk took the documents and asked him if they were following his brother. Sanok replied, well, what is he saying? Surveillance is too strong a word. They did not follow every step of their hunters, but they are still the guarantee of the country's security, so they keep the leadership informed about them. They don't get into hunters' personal lives as it's a sensitive topic. They just collect basic information, like in the case of Kang Ming. Heck thought about the fact that he needed information about his guild affiliation and personal information. Hyuk looked into Sanok's eyes and asked him what was the cause of his brother's death. Sanok replied that he died in the line of duty. He was sent on a mission to clear a large-scale dungeon. It was a joint operation of hunters from several countries, an unprecedented operation involving South Korea, Japan, Russia, the United States, and China. Hunter Kang Ming defeated the boss of the dungeon. Why did he die in an accident? Hyuk sat in a comfortable position, folded his hands in front of him and looked swiftly at Sanok, who was talking about the death of his brother, and he realized, no, there was no accident. He saw the last minute of his life with the help of the gaze of the deceased spell. He was killed, if the association is not aware. Then someone tried to hide the circumstances of Kang Ming's death. Sanok continued, well, he's handing over the keys to his property. Here's his address. He should feel at home and have a good rest there. Heck stared at these clues and thought that he must get to the bottom of the truth. Sanok told him goodbye, and he left the room and slammed the door. Sanok was furious with Hyuk's behavior, and he thought that he wasn't even taught to say thank you. Is he being so arrogant with him just because he's a returned and he's an A-grade hunter? You should be careful with him. When Kang Ming returned to Earth, he had incredible strength, and he knows that Kang Hyuk was summoned with him. So there is no doubt, Kang Hyuk is also a bearer of enormous power, the elder brother of the strongest hunter in the world, the hero of the savior of mankind. When Hyuk left the association building, Desmond told Hyuk that news about him would soon spread not only throughout Korea, but throughout the world. Hyuk arrived at Kang Min's apartment, which was located in a high-rise building. He went inside, sat on the sofa and began to read the documents. When he saw his photo, he thought, so this is what his life was like after returning. In the photo, he was hugging with his friends and was happy, but suddenly he looked at one of the guys in the photo and realized that he knows him. He is almost sure that he was vision of the last minutes of Kang Ming's life. They have the same tattoos with another guy. Perhaps this is a sign that they are in the same guild. Maybe he can find something about this guild and this person. He looked at the documents carefully and thought, aha, this is it. On the documents, he saw some kind of coat of arms. After a while, he was driving a car in the city and thought that according to the documents given by Hwang Sang-wook, the office of the Gargoa Guild led by Kang Min was located in the center of Seochodong. And the guild member didn't find any information. Maybe if he goes to the guild itself, or the better he meets this guy, then he can find out more about the circumstances of his brother's death. He came up with this photo of those two guys and asked the girl if he wants this hunter in the photo, who is next to Hunter Kang Ming. Does she know where he is? The girl replied that this is the hunter Wang Kyuho. But is it possible to find out why he is looking for him? Hyuk replied that he wanted to find him on a personal matter. He really needed to see him. Hyuk thought, Wang Kyuho then. The girl looked at the information window and said that, unfortunately, Wang Kyuho is not in the office right now. He went to close the gate in the Shinsa station area. He could leave his name and phone number, and she would contact the guild's foreign affairs department, who could inform Wang Kyuho when he returned from his assignment in a couple of days. Hyuk replied, thank you, but you don't need to do this. But he thought, Shinsa station then. He arrived at his brother at Shinsa station. This is the name of the portal to the dungeon in another dimension. Unlike hell, here mana is very easy to recognize, especially portal mana. He went behind the fence. The employees were surprised by this and shouted to him where he was going. This is a dangerous zone. But Hyuk don't listen to them moved on. One of the employees said to another if he remembered that Hwang Sang-wook mentioned that older brother Kang Min had returned. This guy looks suspiciously like a dead hunter. Is it really him? The one and only relative of the famous Kang Min, Kang Hyuk? Hyuk looked at the portal. One of the employees approached him, greeted him and addressed him as Mr. Kang. He also apologized to him and added that it was very dangerous here. Heck ignored his remarks and asked if any hunters had entered the portal. The staff member replied that yes, Hwang Kyuho, the leader of the Gargoa Guild's first assault brigade, was clearing the dungeon at the moment. Hyuk replied that he understood everything, and that he would also go there. The man rubbed the back of his head in bewilderment and asked again, "What?" Then he started yelling at him. "Wait a minute, you can't just go there. This is an A-rank dungeon. He must have at least a level to enter it." Another staff member approached the man, took his hand and reminded him that he was the senior leader of Kang Ming. He's probably even higher level than this dungeon. Heck continued to walk towards the portal, and the man shouted to him that even if that was the case, without the permission of the guild or Hunters Association, he was not allowed to enter this dungeon. Another employee spoke to him, but he had already entered. The employee turned around and shouted inquiringly, "What? Here is the horror. Come on, all of them. The returned always do what they want. They just need to report upstairs. If they try to accuse them of this, they will say that he himself came in. The association will take care of it." Heck entered the portal and stopped abruptly, after which he thought, "The atmosphere here is much softer than in Hal, but that's not bad." They went there. Everything around was flooded with bright pink light and bones. Skulls and skeletons of huge wild animals lay on the floor. He looked around, then raised his hand towards the bones, created a magic ball of blue light, and spoke to the animal skeleton. "Rise up." The bones of the animal began to fly up in the air, illuminated by a bright light. These guests turned into new skulls, which spoke, "Lord, let him order them what they need to do." Hyuk looked into their eyes and said that they should follow him. They followed him. In the distance, they could see the bright light from the battle and the loud cry of some guy who was pointing his sword at a monster with bright red eyes. The guy was able to defeat the monster and come up with a lot of blood. He thought, looking at the killed monster, that this is a cursed creature. Behind the guy, next to the killed monster, there were a lot of guys who watched what was happening in silence and with great interest. The guy who defeated the monster got up from the ground and screams were heard that this creature was dead. They began to smile and rejoice at this, and one of the guys said, "Kyuho, he needs to quickly drink the regeneration potion. They do not want him to suffer from the poison of this creature." Kyuho wiped the blood from his face and thanked the guy for his concern, adding to these words that he is a smart guy, and he really likes it. The guy behind him asked if he set a record by killing an A-rank boss so quickly. It seems to them that he could already overtake Kang Ming. Kyuho smiled and said with arrogance that he had already overtaken him in everything for a long time. She just let him take the victory for herself. The guys gathered in a heap and asked again, "Is it true?" "Wow." Kyuho added that all those words about Kang Ming being the strongest of the hunters, don't they know that it's not true? One of the guys said this. But Kang Ming was actually a very strong person, wasn't he? Strong. Kyuho was surprised by these words, turned to the guy and asked him if he was a beginner. Then he should go here. The guy answered him, "Yes, Commander," after which he took a step closer, and at that moment he hit him right in the stomach with such force that he fell, holding his stomach and could not utter anything. Kyuho appeared in front of him and asked again, since he thinks which of them is stronger, him or Kang Ming. He needs to answer this. The guy thought about the fact that this was a real mistake, and he said in a trembling voice that he thought he was many times stronger than him. Kyuho turned up his nose and grinned, after which the guys standing next to him asked him what to do with him. "Kyuho?" Kyuho replied with a smile on his face that they needed to teach him a lesson and then get out of here. The guys smiled and replied that they would do so. One blue-haired guy approached Kyuho and asked him if they would meet later in the same place as last time. Kyuho took a lighter and lit a cigarette with the words, "Freaks. Of course they will go to this place again." He put his hand in his pocket and said that they did a great job today, so hang out together. He took the magic stone in his hands and said that he would go first. Kyuho created a portal and added, "Okay, let them teach him for now and don't delay." The guys replied that they would do so and would be there soon. The guys turned to the beaten guy and asked, "Little jerk, what's his name?" He replied that his name was Taiho. "Oh, Taiho." The guy approached him with a smile on his face and asked, "And how old is he now?" Taiho replied that his age is 21. The guy grabbed his face tightly and said with a rough expression that he didn't like how arrogant he was behaving. If Kang Ming patronized him, then it didn't mean anything. Taiho tried to say that it wasn't impudence at all. The guy grabbed him by the hair and shouted that he was a jerk. He died and he no longer has a roof. Does he understand this? After these words, he shouted that he had better understand his place and do it as soon as possible. Taiho said in a trembling voice the words of apology, and the guy added that if he wants to ask for forgiveness, then he should give his sister's phone number. He also heard that his sister is nothing like a girl who does not have a body, but a work of art. When Kang Ming was still alive, he had heard about what the dungeon hunters were doing. The Gargoa Guild, led by him, was the only one that was disciplined and didn't bring trouble. As long as the strongest hunter led this guild, no one even thought of starting a crime. He never made even the slightest mistake during the operation in the dungeons, and in case of violations he always carefully investigated. Looking for the culprit, he made many enemies by this, but no one could argue with his power directly. He lived with his sister when his meta-human ability awakened. Then he already knew about Kang Ming because he was a human rights activist for people without superpowers. In order to repay his sister for raising him, he joined the Kang Ming Guild. He took him under his wing, protected him, and looked after him, because everything was fine until one day Kang Ming suddenly died under mysterious circumstances. After his death, he felt like prey among other hunters. One by one, these hunters who used to walk along the line began to show their true faces. The guys told him to bring his sister next time and then they would let him go. He hates them, and he would kill them, but he is still far from their strength. The guys continued to mock Taiho, but at that moment, Hyuk joined them. They noticed a person near them and shouted, "Who is standing there?" They got scared and started looking around. Hyuk came closer along with the skeletons he made himself and stopped abruptly, asking them where is Hwang Kyu-ho. The guys turned to him. Their faces were covered in blood and they began to whisper, "Who is it? Maybe this is an acquaintance of Kyu-ho?" They got closer to him and started screaming, "How did he get in here? The portal should have guards from the association." Hyuk didn't answer their questions and asked insistently again, "Where is Hwang Kyu-ho?" The guy answered him that he had already left, and who was he to him? Hyuk remained silent and wondered if he was too late. And at that moment, Taeho tried to say something, so Hyuk turned his attention to him and asked him directly, "Does he know where he is?" The guy standing next to him started yelling at him that he didn't answer their question. What does he have to do with Hwang Kyu-ho? Hyuk replied that he came to him on a personal matter and they should tell him exactly where he went. The guy started screaming. Why on earth should he answer him? Who appeared out of nowhere? And why is he talking to him in such an informal tone? Does he even know him? How old is he? Several guys surrounded Hyuk and again asked the question, why does he need Kyu-ho? They've never met him before. Who is he? Hyuk silently stopped and looked into the distance, and at that moment one of the guys jumped high above him, into whose stomach the piercing arrow crashed. Hyuk repeated his words again that he was asking for the last time. Where is Hwang Kyu-ho? The guys took out their sharp swords and shouted what a freak he is. They ran towards him to attack him, after which there was a loud sound and many skeletons rushed to defend their lord. The guys started to fight with these creatures, but each of them died from such an attack. Taeho screamed for help, lying on the ground, his body shaking. He tried to rise from the ground and suddenly he saw the severed head of one of those guys in front of his feet. He was at a loss. The rest of the guys who fought these skeletons were wondering what kind of creatures. And suddenly the guy thought, are these really skeletons? Why his blows? But before he had time to think about this thought, a skeleton with a sword attacked him from behind and pierced him through. A lot of blood was shed. Taeho saw all these movements, and the skeletons began to come closer to him. He tried to crawl away from them further, but Hyuk approached him closer, and asked with a look what he was asking for the last time. This is his last attempt. Where is Hwang Kyu-ho? Taeho opened his mouth from fear and uncertainty, and he was interested in one question. Who is he? He suddenly appeared in front of them, and why does he need Hwang Kyu-ho? It doesn't really matter now, though, because if he doesn't answer, then all of a sudden, he abruptly starts telling that Hwang is probably in a club in Gangnam right now. Hyuk asked him if he wanted to live. Taeho replied that he wanted to live, and Hyuk told him that in that case, he should take him to this club. Taeho was surprised by this, and said that he didn't actually know the exact address. Hyuk turned to him with red shining eyes, and Taeho immediately replied that he would do everything to find this place. After some time, they came out of the portal. It shone with a bright light, and the staff asked what it was. The two of them went out and they were asked if they were the only ones who survived there. The only ones who... Taeho said yes. The boss was just a beast. They did not expect this. The guards replied that everything was clear, which means that these monsters now threaten people on Earth. Heck thought that only the hunters really knew what was going on in the dungeons. Association workers are forced to write down only what the survivors say, and there is no way to investigate the deaths. The guard took the documents and said that the monster must have been really strong. But why wasn't Hunter Hwang Kyu-ho with them? And how did they manage to defeat the boss? Hyuk silently stood with his hands folded, and Taeho did not know what to answer to this. After his thoughts, Taeho pointed his finger at Hyuk and said that this person came and killed the boss. The guard raised his cap. took a closer look at them, and spoke with a surprised expression. "Is that what Kang Hyuk did?" Taeho got into this conversation and asked the guards again, "Do they know this person?" The guard replied that apparently he did not know, because he himself had only recently awakened the abilities of a metahuman. This is the elder brother of the late Kang Ming. So far there has been no official announcement, but everyone in the association already knows this. Taeho was very surprised by this news and thought, "What? Is he Kang Ming's older brother? Then it's no wonder he's such a strong man." Apparently, he is like his brother. He is a returnee. The returnees are so strong because they were moved to another dimension, survived, and returned to Earth. Kang Ming was the last to return. Despite this, he quickly put together a guild and developed it to the level of the most powerful guild in the world. The guard shouted sharply, "Oh, Taeho!" Taeho turned around and also shouted, "Right?" The guard shouts to him that he is calling him, but he does not answer him. The guard repeated his question, "Why did they go out alone? Where is Hwang Kyuho located? And how could they defeat the boss if Hwang Kyuho left and all the other members of the squad died?" Taeho replied that Kyuho had told them that he had some urgent business and had left with the help of the teleportation stone. Then Kang Hyuk appeared and killed the boss. The guards loudly asked him what he meant. He thought it was just a rumor, but now he's convinced himself. He does not understand where the Gargoa Guild is looking. They would kick him out and that's it. While Kang Min was alive, Hwang Kyuho was very polite and diligent, and now he does whatever he wants. After Kang Min Hwang's death, Kyuho often entered the dungeons and forced his subordinates to do all the work for him, while he himself moved with the help of a teleportation stone. There were many complaints about Hwang Kyuho to the association, but the influence of the Gargoa Guild was so great that the association could not intervene directly in this situation. In addition, an open struggle for power took place within the guild itself. Many contested the vacant position of the leader. Taeho grabbed Hyuk's hand and told him, "Come on, they have to go." The guard replied, "Well, they can do whatever they want, but he will write down the survivors, Oh Taeho and Hwang Kyuho, and also Mr. Kang Hyuk. He will also write his name in this report." Hyuk turned around and looked at him with a sinister look, saying the word no. The guard was frightened and grinning said, "Well, he understood everything, goodbye." Another guard said, "Wow, he also got goosebumps because of him." Another replied that he also has this, he is like Kang Min's brother, but he doesn't look like him at all. But he has returned, which means that he is really very strong. He believes that is why he was able to deal with the boss in the dungeon and bring out the last survivor. Who does he think is stronger, him or Kang Ming? The guard replied that Kang Ming, of course. This guy looks like a completely normal person. At this time, Hyuk and Taeho went to some club, and Hyuk asked him if he was here. Taeho replied that this is one of the clubs he often goes to, but he can't know for sure if he is there now or not, so if anything, he should be excused for that. If he is not here, then he will take him to another club, where he also often visits. Hyuk told him, and he knows him well. To which Taeho smiled and replied that no, it was not. It just so happened that he was the commander of the detachment in which he was a member. Hyuk turned to him and asked him again, did he go clubbing with him? Taeho replied, no, he didn't go there, but he dragged him everywhere with him. Hyuk pointed his finger into the distance and offered to go look for him there. Taeho stepped forward and told him that they would go. They went into a club where loud music was playing, and a lot of people were dancing on the dance floor. They began to look around, and after a while Taeho noticed a man in a suit standing nearby who was yawning. They walked down the long corridor behind him. He stood in the elevator and told them they were late. Taeho smiled, rubbed the back of his head and apologized, after which he said that older brother Kang Ming had come with him. The man asked with caution, older brother? Hyuk looked at him with bright red eyes, and the man asked them why did they come here. Hyuk told him that they certainly did not want to see him here. The man was surprised at these words, and asked him if he really was Kang Ming's older brother. Hyuk repeated that he had already been told about it. The guy thought, here he is a freak. But suddenly he remembered that he needed to calm down, since all the returned are very strong people. So he does not want to have a conflict with him. He would simply break the skull of an ordinary metahuman for such words. The guy opened the door for him and told him to go on. All returned are the same. A high door opened for Hyuk, and he took a step towards it to enter the room, the light in which shone with a bright pink hue. They entered the room and Hyuk stopped, standing in a confident pose, and Taiho stood next to him, who was a little shy and afraid of the events taking place. There were a lot of men in the room who began to look at him with a swift look, but in silence. Everyone paid attention to the newcomer, but no one was glad to see him. They sat at the table and talked. Hyuk counted the guys. There were only 7 people in the room, and Hwang Kyuho is clearly not among them. One of the guys brazenly asked what he needed here. Is he one of the boys from the Kyuho squad? Why did he come to them? Taiho answered in fright that he was Hwang Kyuho's subordinate, and that his name was Oh Taiho. He was asked, "Who is this?" And Taiho replied that the guy next to him is Kang Ming's older brother. All the men were stunned by this news and loudly asked what. Hyuk turned to them and said he was looking for Hwang Kyuho. Where is he? The red-haired boy asked again, "So this is Kang Ming's older brother?" He approached him and said that it meant that the rumor about the return of the late guild leader's brother turned out to be true. He extended his hand to him and said that his name was Gu Changwu. He was the commander of the assault battalion of the Gargoa Guild. Hwang Kyuho was his subordinate. Hyuk shook hands with him and he told him to sit down with them. He shouted to one guy to bring them a drink as the elder brother of the late leader came to them. "And they are sitting here." The guy spoke to him now. That guy added that Kyuho comes here often, but why is he looking for him? Hyuk replied that he needed him on a personal matter. Where is he? Chanu took his hand and asked, "Why don't they sit down for a start? Kyuho has been getting into all sorts of trouble lately, but he can give him a personal file according to which he is looking for him, and he will give it to him." Hyuk turned around and said that he needed to contact him now. Chanu thought that he was a pig. He stubbornly continued to communicate with him familiarly. He would have killed him. He can't believe it's true that this is Kang Ming's older brother. But well, he still knows what he has to do. This time he will pull it down solely because he is returned. Chanu smiled at him and asked if he knew that he was very difficult to contact. But he can send his guys to look for him, after which he suggested that he talk. They cannot share personal information about guild members with the first person they meet. They do not have a call center here. Hyuk sat on the sofa. They brought him a drink and he thought that this is a snake nest. Let them not deceive themselves. He came not only for Hwang Kyuho. He will kill anyone who is somehow involved in the murder of his brother. The killer must have accomplices among the hunters. He should be patient and gather more information. Chanwoo added that it was an honor for him to meet Kang Min's older brother, whom he respected a lot. Hyuk asked him to tell him everything he knows about Hwang Kyuho. Chanu thought about how annoying he was, after which he replied that of course, he does not know much about him, but in general, they get along well with each other. Suddenly, the man asked Taiho, "Where are the rest of the guys?" Taiho asked who. The guy added that he was talking about his squad, which went to the dungeon. Taiho hesitated with the answer and was asked again, "What happened there?" And he thought that if he said one wrong word, then he would be finished. And he replied, "They all died in the boss fight." The guys were perplexed by this news and loudly asked him what. They didn't expect it at all. After such a reaction, they rose from their seats, and one of them asked, "So what kind of monster was there?" Taiho said that in general he was not strong in names, and he generally saw such a monster for the first time. The guy ran closer to him and shouted to him that if he lies, he will kill him. He must tell only the truth. Taiho said with a trembling voice that it was true. This devilish creature was much stronger than they expected. The guy yelled back at him that Kyuho told him that he killed the boss, and left, leaving the rest of the cleanup to others. And he says that all the guys died. And who is the liar here? Taiho did not expect that Hwang Kyuho came here and told them about it, and he immediately began to say that he really killed the boss and left, but the guy interrupted him and asked again with a menacing look, and he replied that while they were cleaning up, other monsters appeared. Chan Woo saw one of his guys talking to Taiho and yelled at him, "What is he doing?" The guy turned around and shouted back to him that he was teaching the newcomer to the mind. He was lying here that after the boss was killed, more monsters appeared and the rest of the squad members were killed. He acts like he's looking for excuses, so he couldn't help but slap him in the face. Chanwoo sat down on the couch across from Hyuk and replied that they had an important guest, so he needed to behave, and the guy replied that he agreed with this, after which he hugged Taiho by the neck and told him, "He says that they were attacked other monsters after the boss." Taiho replied after an awkward silence, "Yes, it was." The guy asked him again, "Then how could he survive? He is the weakest in the group." Well, did the devilish beings take pity on him? Taiho did not know what to answer him and looked at Hyuk, after which he said that it was he who saved him. The guy asked what? Did their late leader's brother save him? Taiho replied yes. Chanu asked him again, so what kind of abilities does he have? Taiho was frightened and very nervous. He thought that none of the returned had shown the ability of necromancy before. Can he tell this truth? What if he kills him if he betrays his ability? And at that moment, with a sweaty face, he said that he had said absolutely everything he knew. At that moment, Hyuk got up from the couch and Chanwoo asked him, "What? Is he already leaving?" Hyuk asked him again, "What else can they talk about?" Chanu smiled at his face, rubbed the back of his head and awkwardly said, "Well, yes, about nothing." Hyuk told Taiho that they were leaving, but at that moment, the guy twists Taiho's neck and yells at him, "Where is he going?" They have not yet agreed with him. He remains with them. Hyuk turns around with a furious look and calmly says that he is coming with him, jerk. The guy yelled at him, "Idiot? Isn't he going too far, dear?" Chanu, sitting on the couch, told him to let him go. He can go since he is so needed. The guy continued to choke the guy and scream that he had not yet told how the men died. Chanu, with a furious look, shouted at him to let him go already. He tells him, "Since when did he care about other people's lives, idiot?" The boy threw Taiho aside and said that he should return as soon as he can, or he will find his sister. Taiho looked at him and answered sadly, "Okay," he understood everything, and he and Hyuk went in the opposite direction. When they left, Chanu asked the guy who taught this jerk to show off in front of the returned ones. The guy replied that the returned ones are not so strong, by the way. One-on-one, yes, but he is the same person as they are, so he has no chance against all of them. The other guy said it was Kang Ming's older brother. He always told these jerks that they shouldn't fight with the returned until they knew what kind of ability they had. When they first see a returned, they are not allowed to show off in front of them. The guy asked the boss again, "Boss, what did he say to him? He didn't tell him where to look for Huang Kyuho, did he?" Chanu answered, "Is he really stupid? Why would he tell the first person he met that?" The guy asked him again, "And what kind of note did he give him then?" Chanu replied that the address of the crematorium was written there. He lit a cigarette and sat at ease, relaxed. The guy asked him again, "Did he send the tired from the road return to the crematorium?" Another guy added that their caring boss Chanu sent him there just so he could sleep forever. Another of the guys added, "Boss, should the rest of the guys be warned about this? After all, he can cause serious problems. After all, he is returned. After all." Chanu replied with a satisfied expression that he would find other returnees in the crematorium to take care of him. The guy asked him again, "Why does he need Kyuho?" Chanu replied that he also thought it was a little suspicious. Well, the returnees would beat him out. He should watch how he talks to him informally. When he is well beaten, then he will learn that on Earth even a returned person has no right to cross the path of certain people. One of the guys picked up the phone, dialed someone's number and asked Chana, "Boss, can he go to the crematorium to see this?" He asked him again, "Is the crematorium a sandbox for him? He needs to go to work." Chanu dialed someone's number and they answered him on the phone. "What is it, Chanu?" He asked him again, "Where is he, Kyuho?" Kyuho replied that he was having fun here. Have his guys already visited him? If anything, he needs to send them here. They need to join him. He has a couple of fresh girls for him. Chanu removed the cigarette from his mouth and told Kyuho to go to his office immediately. Kyuho told him that he would come as soon as possible. Chan-woo began to remember Hyuk's look, and he thought that the guys in the crematorium should solve this issue with this brother. But why is he so nervous about this? Hyuk and Taiho arrived at this address, got out of the car, and Taiho looked around and asked him if he was here. Hyuk also looked around and asked him if he knew what this place was. Taiho replied that this place is called a crematorium. The members of the Gargoa Guild work here, who deal with the consequences of dungeon raids. Did he say that Huan Kyuho would be here? Taiho turned away, covered his mouth, and wondered what this Gu Chang was up to. Huan Yu Kyuho would never come here. Hyuk looked at Taiho and asked him what they were doing in this building. Taiho thought that he was not interested in anything but to find Huang Kyuho. He really is a strange person. Taiho replied after these considerations that some units were engaged in hunting traitors of the Gargoa Guild and spies from other guilds. Having received data from this detachment, people from the crematorium arrest spies and traitors and force them to confess under torture. Hyuk replied that he understood everything, and after that, Taiho added that for him to know, Kang Min had nothing to do with the creation of this place. It was established after his death. And at that moment, Taiho again thought about the strangeness of this man, since he is not at all interested in what is happening in his brother's guild. At that moment, Hyuk turned around and asked if Hwang Kyuho could really be here. Taiho replied that he was not sure about it, so they would have to go there and find out about it there. Hek told him to take him there. Taiho asked what? He? And Hyuk added that he is a member of the guild, he is known here, he should go there and introduce himself, and then tell them to open the door. Taiho replied that he had never been here, and at that moment, Hyuk looked at him with furious eyes and said that he must do what he says, otherwise he will die. Taiho replied with a frightened expression that he understood everything. Taiho with sharp steps went towards the gate, and someone said, "Guys, they have guests." The other guy asked him again, "Who is there?" He replied that it was the older brother of the late leader who had arrived. The guys started to wonder, did he really come here? Wow, and he turned out to be much dumber than he thought. Does he even know what this place is? He's kind of overconfident because he's a returnee, just like Kang Ming. One of the reasons why he ordered to live long. One of the guys yelled at all the other guys to get these morons over here quick. He got a call from Chan. They need to show them to the building and tell them that Kyuho is here. The guys replied that they understood everything and everything would be done. They turned around and went in the opposite direction. And the guy stayed next to the information monitors. At this time, an interview was taking place in the building of the department of the association. Sanuk stood in front of all the members of the association present and answered their questions through the microphone. People asked what his abilities are. Sanuk replied that they did not have this information yet. They asked a lot of questions about where he was staying. Sanuk replied that he had sent him to Kang Ming's quarters, where they could keep a full watch on him. Someone from the audience asked if he suspects something about the death of his brother. Sanuk replied that it was impossible, that he appeared on Earth so soon. It was just a coincidence. How could he know about the death of his brother if he was in another dimension? He explained the accident to him, and he seemed to understand it. People were sitting at the table looking sad, and Sanuk suggested that they not make a molehill out of molehills because of the usual return. One guy started yelling, "What, make a molehill out of a molehill?" Did they forget how many people they had to sacrifice in order to get rid of Kang Ming? He replied that Kang Ming was strong, but his brother was hardly superior. The guy yelled, "Why do they think that? Did he suggest that they not jump to conclusions until they knew more about him?" Someone replied that they don't need to be nervous, gentlemen, and he said that they should not forget that there are many metahumans in the world, and they continue to improve their skills. They were able to defeat Kang Ming with the help of the other returned. Do they remember that? Even if his brother is strong, he won't be able to stand alone against them all. All over the world, hunters took over, and the earlier returnees created a system in the world that the later returnees reinforced. Kang Ming tried to go against the system, and what? Did he succeed? No matter how strong he was in a fight against any of them, when he was attacked by a whole squad together, it was his end. Another guy added that Kang Ming was an unintelligent rebel. They would have to see what kind of person his brother would turn out to be, and if he was the same, then they would have to deal with him too. And all the people came to the conclusion, for sure, they will get rid of him if he puts spokes in their wheels. Sanuk added to all these words that in a meeting with the president, it was decided that they should look at his behavior for the time being and do nothing more. Since they are the leaders of the hunters' guilds from South Korea, he felt the need to convey this to them. One of the guys said, "Mr. Hwang, it is his duty to find out the nature of Kang Hyuk's abilities. For other issues, he may not even call him. Does he even understand how many projects he has on fire right now?" Sanuk apologized to him for wasting his precious time, leader. One of the guys added that he needed to tell the president to destroy Kang Ming's personal file. Sanuk replied that they had already taken care of that. What he gave Kang Hyuk was just an internal paperwork, and someone yelled that they needed to watch him and keep him informed. All the members grabbed the magic stones and began to disappear. Sanuk replied that he understood everything, and he himself said quietly what it was. Not a single meeting they send him to is complete without rudeness in his direction. He straightened his tie and looked into the distance. At this time, Hyuk and Taeho began to go inside the crematorium. A guy came out to them and said what kind of people came to them. He held a cigarette in his mouth, and with a menacing look said that he was the commander. His name was Kim. He had been working in the crematorium of the Gargoa Guild since his return to Earth. Chanu warned him about this, and he said that he was the brother of Kang Ming, that is, their leader. And he asked with a smile on his face, "Can he ask why they need their Kyuho?" Hyuk, with furious eyes, said that it was absolutely none of his business. He was told that he was here, so he needed to lead him. Kim laughed and said, didn't he think it was not very polite to be familiar with someone he saw for the first time? A few more guys joined them, and one of them said that they don't communicate with them like that here. Does he understand this? Hyuk continued to stare at him with complete self-confidence and a formidable look that Kim got scared and wondered what was wrong with this blockhead. He doesn't seem to be afraid of anything at all. Hyuk stopped and said again that they should bring Hwang Kyuho here. Kim replied that in that case, he would have to tell him why he needed him, since they did not betray their people. Hyuk said without changing his expression that he was giving them one last chance. Kim chuckled. Why not two? And he thought, but he's not angry. Hyuk said he said his name is Kim, so he does not need him, but Kyuho. Kim lit a cigarette and replied that the Gargoa Guild no longer belongs to Kang Ming. In other words, he is his brother, and he cannot come here and rule. Hyuk grinned in his face, and Kim loudly asked him again with anger, is he laughing at him like that? Heck asked in his mind. Desmond, how many souls were looking at him right now? Desmond replied that 25 souls were at his side now, his lord. Heck told him that Desmond should keep track of all their movements, and suddenly he spoke to wake them up. At that moment Kim laughed and shouted, hey, who's asleep there? Then Brother Kang Ming orders them to wake up. He laughed out loud and heard the words that no one fell asleep. Commander, he is as crazy as Kang Ming. It will be interesting to work on him. Does he need to call the others? But at that moment, many skeletons with bright red eyes awakened behind Heck. And people who saw the monsters approaching them began to scream loudly in fear. They saw their reflection in the sharp swords of these skeletons, and they became creepy. Hyuk did not change the posture in which he stood and his facial expression. At that moment, one of the guys saw how the commander was attacked, and his blood spilled on the floor. The guy spoke in fright, Commander. The skeletons continued to attack the guys, and one of them pointed his gun at the skeleton, the bullet from which flew through it and did not affect anything. Hyuk watched the fight from the side. He saw a guy with a gun and thought, does he endow the bullets with magical powers? The guy aimed the gun again, and bright orange sparks began to emanate from this weapon. The bullet went through the skeleton, and many fragments flew off the skull. Kim got up from the ground and said, here he is a freak. How dare he attack them? He grabbed a gun, took a sharp step to the side, turned around and shouted, what? Behind him, he saw flying bones from a monster, made several deft movements to the side, twisted several times, got up again and pointed the gun at it, after which he shouted that without magic bullets it was very difficult for him. The skeleton jumped on him and pressed him to the floor. Kim saw another behind this skeleton and pointed the gun at it and fired. And suddenly a bright red ball cracked in front of him. He did not understand what had happened and wondered what. What did he get into? Bright splashes of blood formed from this ball and he began to scream. He dropped the gun. There was blood on his right shoulder from the sword stuck through it. He reached for the gun again and shot at the approaching monster, after which he grabbed the sword and pulled it out of his shoulder. He spilled a lot of blood. He pointed the gun again and shouted, damn it! He fired again at the skeleton and flew away from the lightning explosion. While he was flying, he dropped his gun, after which Kim landed and grabbed his shoulder. The guy ran up to him and asked loudly, Commander, what was happening to him? Kim shouted back at him to quickly arm themselves and exterminate everyone here. Kim jumped up and began to run away from the approaching monsters with a frightened expression, running past Hyuk. He noticed him and shouted to him that now he is definitely a corpse. Does he understand this? Hyuk did not change his expression and looked straight into the distance. Kim thought, what a horror. How did it come to this? He lived so freely on Earth that he did not even notice how he had lost his skill. Why did he have to fight a necromancer right now? And why is the necromancer brother Kang Ming? Kim looked back. Behind him were a lot of skeletons chasing him. One of the skeletons attacked him from behind with a sword in his hands. Someone shouted loudly to him, Commander! He turned around and saw a row of skeletons cast in bright blue light. People ran up to him and said that he should take the potion. He grabbed his shoulder and shouted to them that they had killed them, while he himself drank a green potion. After that, He wiped his mouth and said to the person standing next to him that this is Kang Ming's brother. He is very dangerous, and there is no need to play with him. They need to go all out and kill him. The guy asked again, Commander, and next to him isn't one of Kyuho's guys. What should they do with him? Kim replied that he too must be killed. Hyuk at this time folded his hands in front of him and told Taiho that he had nothing to be afraid of. Taiho told him to be careful as they have a special ammo pack. Magic bullets kill even the undead with a few shots, and if they are consecrated, then even one bullet is enough for this. Hek looked into the distance and saw military armed men who stopped in front of him and began firing weapons at the skeletons. The skeletons saw this and looked at each other. Kim was stunned by what he saw and in great horror realized what it was like. How can an ordinary stupid undead calculate the trajectory of a bullet and dodge? Hek extended his hand and directed his magic powers at the monsters that crawled further towards them. The guy holding the weapon got scared and shouted that this person is a necromancer. Kim shouted back at him that he knew about this and that he needed to quickly carry his machine gun out of the armory and the others too. Hek told the skeletons to just go ahead. And these skeletons rushed to attack them. People were screaming, "Fire!" Someone screamed in pain and horror. The skeleton hit one of the guys in the back with a sword through and through. The skeletons grabbed someone by the neck, and many were injured. Suddenly there was a bright, fiery explosion. Kim turned away from it and ended up on the stairs. People shouted at him, "Commander, Commander!" Hek continued to use magic and told the monsters to get on with it. Kim shouted from afar that they killed all the monsters faster. The longer they delay with this, the worse it will get. These are tough monsters. The guy approaching him from behind with a weapon said that he was right. These are intelligent skeleton warriors with combat experience. But no one has ever met such a dexterous and strong undead in the dungeons. Where did these come from? Kim leaned against the wall. The skeletons continued to chase the guys. These creatures climbed to the second floors and crawled after the remaining people. Suddenly, behind Kim and the green-haired guy standing next to him, there was an explosion in the wall, and stones fell in different directions. And after a moment, skeletons began to pass through this wall. Kim and the guy got scared. The guy grabbed the weapon and pointed it at the monster, but at the same moment the skeleton kills the guy, cutting off his head. His head flies a long distance, which Kim sees and starts running immediately in the other direction from these monsters. He looked back and looked at the skeletons, with the thought that everything would be over. He had only to kill him, and necromancers are weak against physical attacks. Hyuk looked directly into Kim's eyes with a calm look, and at that moment some guy throws a weapon to Kim with the words, "Commander, hold on quickly." Kim grabs a gun in his hands and starts shooting at all the surrounding monsters. A smile appears on his face. Hyuk continues to look at him and smile a little as the fierce fight continues, but suddenly there is a bright, fiery explosion. Hek tells the skeletons to start their attack. They run straight at the guy with red hair and pierce him through the stomach with a sharp sword right from the back. Blood poured from his mouth and wounds. Hek looked into the distance with a swift gaze and spoke with a skeleton to rise. He pointed his hand up and the skeletons continued on their way to the guys. One of them wondered, is he a skeleton archer? Can he really survive even the undead with long-range weapons? He is not a simple necromancer at all. The skeleton standing near Hek grabbed a bow and arrow, with strength and dexterity directed it at the rest of the people, and pierced Commander Kim through the stomach. He flew some distance away, but was grabbed by the skeleton by the hair, and after the impact, he fell into the rubble of the building on the floor below. Hyuk walked through all the skeletons to him, and Kim told him in a trembling voice that he was a monster. He should not come near him. And at that moment, another skeleton comes up to him and plunges a sharp knife into his leg. He screams in pain and asks loudly, does he even understand what he's done? Hyuk walked closer to him and said that he should have just brought Hwang Kyuho and none of this would have happened. Kim kept yelling that he was crazy. Why does he need him? He made a mistake and should not think that by killing him, he will solve his problems. One day he will regret that he returned to Earth. At that moment, a skeleton approaches him, grabs his head and tilts him face down to the ground, causing him to scream in pain. Hyuk replied that he should listen to what he says while he is being beaten. Another skeleton approaches him from the other side and cuts his arm with a point. He screams in pain again, and Hyuk tells him that he will give him another chance, so he will tell him where Hwang Kyuho is. Kim's body was trembling in pain. He was covered in blood and serious wounds, and he said that he just needs to kill him, and that's it, he still won't hear anything from him. And he laughed. Hyuk replied that he was sorry. He would still get all the information he needed from him. He gave him a chance to do without it. Kim's eyes began to close, but in the end, he saw the expression on Hyuk's face, who told him that after his death, he would definitely tell him everything. Kim told him that he knew he was a necromancer, but if he thought he could use his body after he died, then he would fail. Hyuk turned away from him and told the skeleton to kill him. He went on and the skeleton took out a sharp sword, came closer to Kim and stuck the sword in his chest. Kim was killed. Heck came out of there and Desmond mentally told him that 25 souls were now at his disposal, his lord. He decided to apply the gaze of the deceased, looked at Kim and he heard a voice that wondered who he was. Is that Kang Ming's brother? Where is Hwang Kyuho now? Did he invite him to the club? Okay. Hyuk looked into the distance and told Taeho they had to go back. He asked him where? To the club? But why go there? What is he going to do there? They got into the car and Hyuk told him that he would see everything soon. Taeho asked again, what about the crematorium? But before he could finish, Hyuk interrupted him and asked again, what was wrong with this? Taeho replied that he had just killed all the soldiers of the crematorium. If they did not communicate for a long time, then other hunters would come here and see what happened. Heck asked again, so what? Taeho replied angrily that the guild would take revenge on him. They continued on their way, and Taeho abruptly started yelling that he was telling him about this because he might be in danger, but personally he doesn't care. Okay, actually he talks about it because he is afraid of dying. He knows that he is a necromancer and a very strong person, and for the first time in his life he sees creatures as dangerous as skeleton warriors, so he is sure that he'll be fine, but he's not like that. If the Gargoa Guild finds out about what exactly happened in the crematorium, then they will come for him. After all, Gu Chang saw that he left with him, and he himself thought about the fact that he also worries about his sister. Hyuk asked him again, is that all he wanted to say? Taeho replied, well, since he can control death, revive the dead there. But before he could finish this phrase, Hyuk asked him again, did he want him to hide the evidence by resurrecting the members of the crematorium? Taeho replied that it was not necessary to resurrect them, but wouldn't it be better to hide the evidence of involvement in what happened? Hyuk replied that he did not need that rubbish in submission. He already had his own team. Taeho said, then for his sake he needs to do it. Hyuk looked at him with a deep expression, and Taeho apologized to him for going over the top. But why is he doing this? Hyuk turned to him and asked if he knew anything about the crypt sect. Taeho asked him what? Hyuk looked to the side and mentally said that Hwang Kyuho should be sent to the crypts, let him lay low for now. Taeho looked at him in surprise, and asked how he knew about the crypt sect. Hyuk replied that he saw something about it when he was looking through the association's information about his brother. Taeho told him that the crypt sect is a criminal organization. It is the largest gang in the country, and after some of its members awakened, they continued their criminal activities with even more enthusiasm. Master Kang Ming often ruined their plans, so the relationship between the guild and the crypt sect has always been hostile. When the first dungeons and monsters appeared on Earth, it was believed that this catastrophe was the beginning of the human end. But after some time, some of the people woke up, and another part returned from other dimensions. Since then, no one has used the term disaster. Mankind has managed to adapt to this. Without hesitation, many have used their abilities to commit greater and more daring crimes than before. Hyuk asked him again, did his brother eliminate the entire crypt sect? Taeho replied, well, no, not completely. Most of the victims of the crypt sect were ordinary people, not awakened. Although many awakened become their victims, many of them died due to the difference in abilities. Then they came for Master Kang Ming. Hyuk told him to keep talking about it. Taeho asked, what right now? It's a very long story. All the same, they are a very famous gang of scum. Hyuk asked him if there was a reason why they couldn't talk about it now. Taeho replied, not exactly, but if someone comes and sees this car, and then Hyuk said that he would kill them for him. Taeho chuckled and asked, what? Hyuk replied that he would do his job, and let him do his. He needed to tell everything about this crypt sect. At that moment, Hwang Kyuho was sitting at Chanwoo's table, and Chanwoo asked him, Kyuho, to whom did he manage to tell about Kang Min's murder? Kyuho asked him what he was talking about, sir. He's not that kind of person. Chanwoo started yelling at him. Then why is older brother Kang Ming that freak who just returned from another dimension, sniffing something out of them about his death? Kyuho was surprised and asked how he should know this. He just misunderstood something. He knows that he got rid of all the evidence after the death of Kong Ming. Why would he sniff out anything at all? Chanu chuckled and replied that that was why he was worried about it. Brad and he continued to smoke a cigarette. Kyuho chuckled and replied, "What about this insignificant problem? If he's so nervous about it, then they can just get rid of the cause of his anxiety. Kang Min's brother's name is Kang Hyuk, right? Where is this freak? He'll ask his boys to get rid of him for him, sir." Chanu asked him if he thinks this is really funny. What the hell did he find so funny? Kyuho apologized to the boss. At that moment, Chanu stood up and told Kyuho to go after him. They would temporarily lie down at the bottom of the freaks from the crypt sect. Kyuho asked why they need to do this. He knows that he has a bad relationship with them. Chanu told him that he should do as he says if he does not want to die. They left the room and opened the door. Chanu told him to follow him. Kyuho replied that he would only go if they had pretty girls there. Chanu asked him again, is he seriously talking about it now? Kyuho apologized to him and said that it was his joke. He turned back and told the guy that he would be back soon, and at this time he needs to carefully monitor everything that seems suspicious to him, and also he must not change his eyes from the surveillance monitors. Is everything clear to him? The guy answered, "That's right, boss." The guy turned on the tablet and said that his next day of work as a watchdog had begun. Suddenly on video surveillance, he saw two people from wondered who they were. The guys approached him and asked what happened there. And suddenly they realized that the elder brother of the former guildmaster was already here. What? Didn't he go to the crematorium? He should have died a long time ago. What happens he did not get there and decided to return? What should they do? Boss Chanu has already left. The guy asked them to contact him, but for now they should take care of them. They got together and began to think, what exactly should they do in this situation? One of the guys replied that he already said they could take care of it. The other guy yelled at them to tell the guards to let those freaks in when they got a little closer. Suddenly they looked ahead and continued the discussion. One guy said to the other that he knew the boss hated it when they made a mess here, so he offered to take them to the basement. The guy replied that he was a jerk. Did he seriously think that the returnee would gladly go with them to the basement, simply because they would ask him to? They'll just put up a barrier to keep things from getting dirty here. Hey, what's he doing? He should get his butt up and start putting up a barrier. The guy sank to the ground, put his hand on it, and a bright blue color formed from his hand. A magical dome formed in this room, and he said that the barrier was already ready. Now even if blood and organs spill here, they will simply collapse the barrier and burn the contents. The other guy chuckled and said they did a good job. He's really not impressed by this older brother of the past master. Well, since he's a returned human, shouldn't they prepare for some kind of loss? The other guy turned around and asked, "Take a loss?" The other guy replied that this freak is a returned person. He doesn't think he's going to let them kill him so easily without resistance. The guy took out a knife and said that he was a jerk because they were just going to outsmart him. Why does he need a brain at all if he does not use it at all? This is a new weapon type developed by the Crypt sect. It is likely that this is extremely effective against the awakened. He offered to check out this one and raise the weapon up. The guy asked him what? It's just a knife. Are they afraid that people no longer consider them gangsters? The guy said, "Hey, Bald, what is the difference between a regular knife and this one?" He replied that if he pierces someone with such a knife, then he will begin to collect the mana of this loser. Whether he is at least a metahuman, even if he returns, how will he use magic if his mana is drained to the last drop? No, and he just dies. The guy asked him again. So they're just going to kill him. He replied that they would see what they would need to do according to the situation. If anything, they will just tell the boss that they got a little carried away and accidentally killed him. It will only cost them a couple of slaps in the face. The guy answered, "Yes, he's just a psycho, okay? It doesn't matter if anything. Then all the responsibility remains on him." The guy told him that you don't need to worry about it. He will tell the boss about everything. So guys, they shouldn't sit back and follow his plan. The other guy said that the bald one wanted to take all the blame. He should also be given a mana knife. This knife was handed to him. They heard a knock on the door, turned to the aisle altogether and told him to come in. Hyuk found some people escorting along with Taiho. They went inside and everyone was dumbfounded. Taiho thought about how terrible it was. They had locked all the exits. He knew that everything would be exactly like this. The hunters had already found out what had happened and were waiting for them. And what should he do? There is no safe corner for him in this room. He will simply have no choice but to fight them along with Kang Hyuk. Will he cope with everything or not? Hyuk stopped in front of a bunch of guys and asked them, "Where is the guy who was sitting here before?" The guy with a cigarette in his hand answered, but he looks, does not follow his tongue at all. Who does he mean by that guy? Hyuk thought that there was no need for him to waste time on them to find out where Hwang Kyu-ho was. He told him that he had a chance, and at that moment his eyes lit up with a bright red color, and he spoke, awakening. At that moment, a lot of skeletons formed a room, and these creatures went to attack all the guys in the room. They were frightened. Is it really the rebellious soldiers? Hex said to go ahead. The soldiers formed magic balls, after the creation of which the light went out for these people, and they shouted about it. They began to shout that they should take up arms as soon as possible. One guy replied that he understood everything, and would do it. A fierce battle began between them, and the guy thought about the fact that he needs to remain calm, and also need to inform the boss about this. But at that moment, the skeletons attacked him and stuck the sword right through his back. He saw his own blood, and realized that they were seriously mistaken. He is not an ordinary necromancer. He is death itself. At this time, some noises were heard among the people in the office, and someone turned around at this sound and asked if they had already lost. The dead appearance of one of the guys appeared before them, and people were very surprised and frightened by this. The walking dead went further towards them, and people started shouting that they needed to go to bed because it was about to explode. At that moment, there was a sharp explosion and many people flew off for a long distance. At this moment in the crypt sect, one of the guys asks, so he wants him to take care of his subordinate. Chanu replied that he only needed it for a while. Kyuho sat next to him silently and said nothing. The guy took the cigarette out of his mouth and said he needed an explanation why he had to keep it here. Kyuho replied, "Brother Kentak, you don't need to be such a person, because they are old acquaintances with him." So he answered loudly, yelling so that this moron would not laugh in his face, otherwise he would kick his ass. Kyuho replied, "Okay, he won't do that." And Tak shouted that he didn't like the way he looked, his behavior, and even his voice. "He hates every cell of his body, you horrible jerk." Chanu responded to this so Kentak wouldn't say that, like it or not, they're still part of the crypt family, aren't they? So jumped up and asked, "Family? Since when are the assholes under Kang Min's wing a part of his family?" Kyuho answered, "Brother, that's it." But before he could finish, Tak started yelling at him to make this idiot shut up and be silent. They fools didn't say a word to him when Kang Ming was alive, and now that he's dead, they crawled back to him. Chanu replied that they can solve all the problems later, if it bothers him. Then he asks him to comply with his request. He really needs his help now. So he told them to go to someone else. He knows many people now, doesn't he? Chanu turned to Kyuho and asked him to go get some coffee. Kyuho stood up and said of course he would do it. After he left, Tak asked Chanwoo why he cares about this garbage. Chanwoo replied, "So has he heard of Cha Yu-hyuk?" He asked him again, did he mean the first president of the Returned Association? Chanu answered yes, he means the same monster. So I asked, what's wrong with that? He replied that this jerk, Hwang Kyu-ho, is his stepbrother, Kyu-ho. So he turned around and asked him in bewilderment, what? Is he serious? Chanwoo replied that if it wasn't for Cha Yu-hyuk, he would have killed this idiot 40,000 times already. So he answered, what a horror. He knew that someone was standing behind him, since he was so arrogant, but whatever, he did not expect this. So he asked, so these gangsters who hunted for Kang Ming were working on. But before he could finish it, Chanwoo answered him that it was true. They were the people of Cha Yu-hyuk, an elite squad that the monster clan kept a secret. So I asked him, then he can also work with Cha Yu-hyuk? Chanu asked again, so he needs something from him? So he answered, yes, a lot of things, but all hunters are the same, as he knows. First of all, not everyone adheres to the logic of power as they do. But recently, it was revealed that there are those who lack strength even in the crypt sect. Chanu replied that they can discuss it later. They should hold this idiot next to them now, and he will put in a word for him in front of Cha Yu-hyuk.